Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Monday, August 10th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Ball State game in 26 days, the game against Michigan in 110 days. We're sponsored today by Jeff Ruby's Columbus, proudly offering nationally acclaimed USDA prime steaks, seafood and sushi, impeccable service, live entertainment, and an attention to detail that is simply unmatched. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus to check out the menu and make a reservation today. All right, on today's show, we're going to be talking about some things that we learned inside Ohio State football practice. You want to hear some stuff that Tony Gerderman and I were hearing following Sunday's closed practice? There's a Buckeye Weekly podcast episode talking about some of that. And we've got even more information on that on the Insiders board at BuckeyeInsiders.com. This would be a great time for you to go sign up there, get access to our full team of insiders. You get Tony and I covering the team, you get Juck covering recruiting, you get Marcus covering basketball, and we have our scheme insiders as well, Ross Fulton and Michael Pettit. Michael is my guest on today's show. He was at practice on Saturday. I wanted to sort of pick his brain on some of the things that he saw because he had some different takeaways than Tony and I did and Marcus and I did following that practice. And let's start, Michael, with the linebacker position because you were watching all the different groupings of linebackers that they had and the different combinations of guys they had out there. What did you learn about that, and what are you maybe thinking it might mean for the linebackers this fall?
Well, my takeaway from the linebackers is that I don't know that the starting linebackers are set in stone. I think, in particular, at one point in time, I kind of thought that it was going to be Pierce and Alliegro, but it seemed like a lot of different linebackers were getting looks with the ones yesterday, and they were kind of giving a lot of the linebackers reps at the different linebacker spots. So, for example, at one point, I kind of have always assumed Peyton Pierce will be the starting Mike linebacker. I would still think he will be. But at one point, he was at will with TJ Alford at Mike. And then when Riley Pettijohn and TJ Alford were on the field together, Pettijohn was at Mike and Alford was at will. And then at one point, they went with a 4-3 look, and Alliegro was at will, Alford was at Sam, and Peyton Pierce was at Mike. So a lot of different moving around. I'm sure just trying to, figure out the best combinations they have with that versatile room they have.
And that's something that Ryan Day's talked about a bunch, that they are sort of shuffling guys around right now just to sort of figure out what they're working with and the best combinations there. But one thing that I think might be a little bit different for people this year is it feels like we're coming out of a time when James Laurinaitis was a linebacker at Ohio State, there was a lot of 4-3 out there. And then football changed and you got into the spread era and all that kind of stuff. And then you saw a lot more two linebacker sets and a lot more sort of 4-2-5 kind of defenses. Now it feels like things are swinging back a little bit, and you might be sort of re-entering the era of 4-3 linebackers.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. Football scheme is always cyclical. Things come and go, and we really are entering what some people like Cody Alexander of MatchQuarters.com describes as the post-spread era, because offenses are now using more two tight end looks and things like that. And so defenses are naturally responding. They're having a lot of times, playing with a third linebacker on the field or using what's called a big nickel, which is, instead of having more of a, I guess for lack of a better term, more of a cornerback at nickel, have someone who's kind of a hybrid between a linebacker and a safety at nickel. So yeah, that's definitely part of it. And on this topic, a lot of times in the off seasons, people speculate, will Ohio State play more three linebacker looks? Will we see more of this? I do want to say that as far as defense goes, a lot of that really depends on what the offense is doing. If the offense is running a lot of 11 personnel, meaning only one tight end's on the field, you're not going to be putting in a third linebacker, even if it's 4th and 1, because you need to be matching the offense's personnel. If the offense is running a bunch of two tight end looks, then yeah, you are more likely to get three linebacker looks and run a 4-3 or something like that. But I guess the point I'm making is that how many three linebacker sets versus two linebacker sets the defense runs is not necessarily something that the defensive staff can just decide unilaterally, because they have to, account for what the offense is doing.
And you're facing some very, very different offenses this year. You're facing Texas, but you're also facing Iowa, and you're facing Oregon and USC, but you're also facing a Kyle Whittingham coached Michigan. So you may see different linebacker groupings and and opposing personnel groupings varying quite a bit over the course of the season, even just in those sort of high profile games. So that was a little bit on the defensive side of the ball. I also wanted to get a little bit of your thoughts on the offensive side of the ball because Arthur Smith, the new offensive coordinator for Ohio State, we're going to get a chance to talk to him a little later on in the week, and I'm interested to hear what he has to say. But I think there's a lot of interest in what he's going to bring to the ground game because that's sort of where his strength has sort of historically lied. I don't know. That's where his strength has historically been. So he is coming in, replacing Brian Hartline. Brian Day, obviously a guy whose strength lies in the passing game. What did you see out of the run game on Saturday out of Ohio State and what do you think it might mean for what to expect this fall?
Yeah, I didn't have the greatest view of the 11 on 11 period on Saturday, but what I noticed in the run game was it seemed like a lot more under center from the offense, which is, I think, something that we had kind of heard might be the case. And I felt like the offense was running stretch a lot or wide zone, whichever you want to call it, which I know some Ohio State fans may have a complex relationship with hearing that the offense is going to be running a lot of stretch potentially. But that was kind of something that we expected with Smith coming in. And I would like to, point out that having another guy like Smith, who's well versed in stretch, there to coach it, could definitely make the execution end up being better. And in addition to stretch, I saw a fair amount of duo. Duo is essentially power without the polar. The offensive line is down blocking, and the running back is reading the Mike linebacker and determining whether to stay inside or bounce outside, depending on what the Mike linebacker does. But duo is also a play that we've seen a lot throughout the Ryan Day era.
So you talked earlier about the fact that the offense kind of dictates what the defense puts out there personnel wise. That are you playing two linebackers or three? Well, that sort of depends on what the offense is doing. So the offense can sort of dictate things. So how does the offense decide what makes duo or stretch a good fit for this year's team? Is that the offensive line and what they're good at? Is that the vision of the running backs and what they're good at? Is that what makes those plays that might be a good fit for this year's Ohio State team?
I think anytime you run a lot of zone and stretch in particular, one of the most important things is the running back's vision and cutting ability. Uh, I think when I think of the best guy I've ever seen run stretch at Ohio State, I always think of J.K. Dobbins. His vision was so good, but also his ability to make a quick jump cut on a dime is what made him so effective in the zone scheme that he was running a lot during Ryan Day's first year as a head coach. So I'd say running back vision is very much important in this. And yeah, I'd say as far as the offensive line goes, typically, you know, athletic or maybe smaller offensive lines, some people associate that with being better at zone blocking than gap blocking. I think, there might be too much looking into that. I think, generally speaking, with the right coaching, you can get the offensive line to block any type of way at an adequate level.
And of course, we are right now, as we are recording this, four practices into the fall. We get a chance to watch the first three. And again, we have some information on the fourth one on our insiders board at BuckeyeInsiders.com. But yeah, I think it's also important for people to recognize that it feels like, okay, everyone sort of dusts their hands and says, all right, we've seen these practices. We know what's going to happen this year. Yeah, I mean, maybe, but there's also a long way to go between now and the kickoff of that Ball State game.
Yeah, I mean, Ethan Onyanwa was the starting left tackle at this point in fall camp last year, and as we saw, he hardly played at all during the actual season. So we're going to hear a lot of things, and I'm not saying that you should just throw everything you hear out the window because it doesn't matter, but I do think that it might be a little too early to assume that just because you heard that so and so was with the ones that it means they have a starting spot locked this fall. I think there's a lot, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. I think there's still a lot of the coaches are still really trying to mix and match looks and see where their players fit best.
All right, so there you go. A little bit of a recap of some of the stuff we maybe took away from the first week at Ohio State football practice and what it might mean for this fall. If you enjoy these kinds of shows, you would really enjoy being a member at BuckeyeInsiders.com. We have two scheme insiders, Ross and Michael, covering the team, making you a smarter football fan with lots of insight and analysis. You want to ask them questions, that is the place to do it on the Insiders board at BuckeyeInsiders.com. We would love to have you join us there. Really, really fun community. Lots of very lively conversation there, but also a very good-natured community. Really enjoy being a part of that. So I think you guys would too. Join us at BuckeyeInsiders.com. And thanks again to our friends at Jeff Ruby's of Columbus, the award-winning upscale steakhouse in downtown Columbus, named one of the top 50 steakhouses in America by Food Network. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus to check out the menu and make a reservation today. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.